March 7th, 1945. Remagen, Germany. The air trembles with the deep, rhythmic thunder of artillery. A bitter wind sweeps across the Rhine, carrying the scent of smoke, cordite, and wet stone. In the distance, the once picturesque town of Remagen lies battered and broken, its narrow streets filled with the jagged remains of war. Captain Karl Timmermann of the U.S. 27th Armored Infantry Battalion squints through his field glasses from a hill overlooking the valley. His heart pounds beneath layers of mud-streaked wool and webbing. Below him, stretching across the grey waters of the Rhine, stands the Ludendorff Bridge, blackened, scarred, but still standing. The sight is almost unreal. Every intelligence report had said the same thing. All bridges across the Rhine have been blown, but there it is, an iron skeleton spanning the river, its twin stone towers defiant against the smoke-choked sky. Timmermann lowers his glasses. Around him, the men of Combat Command B wait, crouched beside their M4 Shermans and half-tracks, their faces ghostly with exhaustion and disbelief. Sergeant Alex Drabick, a wiry Ohio farm boy with eyes that burn with reckless energy, mutters under his breath. "Hell, Cap. Looks like the Krauts forgot one." Timmermann says nothing. His radio crackles with static. A distant voice, Colonel Leonard Engermann, their commanding officer, comes through the interference. "Charlie Company, advance to the bridgehead. Get across if you can. Repeat. Get across." The order lands like a hammer blow. Crossing the Rhine had been Eisenhower's dream, the ultimate objective of the Western Front. Every mile fought since Normandy had been aimed toward this river, a line the Germans vowed to defend at all costs. But now, by chance or miracle, one bridge still stands. As the column rumbles forward, the ground quakes beneath the weight of armor. American artillery fires overhead in great arcs, pounding German positions on the far bank. Shells burst like thunderclaps, sending fountains of dirt and flame skyward. The men clutch their weapons tighter, Garands, Thompsons, bars, and glance nervously at the sky where Luftwaffe planes could appear at any moment. Ahead, the bridge looms larger, its steel trusses shrouded in smoke. German engineers have packed it with explosives, charges wedged into beams, columns, and rail ties, but for reasons no one yet understands, it hasn't gone up. Inside one of the bridge's stone towers, German Lieutenant Karl Peters wipes soot from his face, his hands trembling as he checks the detonator box again. His commanding officer, Major Scheller, shouts orders amid the chaos. "We must blow it, now Peters, before the Americans reach the span." But the circuits fail to respond. The wires are frayed. The detonation cables, cut during earlier bombing runs, refuse to carry the charge. Desperation fills the air. Scheller curses and slams his fist against the wall, sweat mixing with dust and fear. Outside, the Americans close in. Bullets whine off steel girders. Mortar shells thud into the mud. The first Sherman tank halts near the bridge approach, its gun turret swiveling toward a German machine gun nest hidden among the ruins. The blast of the cannon rocks the valley, scattering debris into the Rhine. Timmermann shouts above the roar, "Drabick, you and your squad, move, take that bridge before they blow it." Drabick grins, adrenaline overriding fear. He leads his men down the embankment, their boots splashing through puddles of oily water. Rifle fire rakes the bridge deck from the far side, tracers slicing the smoke like fiery needles. The Americans duck low, sprinting from girder to girder. Halfway across, the world erupts. A deep, bone-shaking explosion tears through the bridge, lifting it into the air. A column of fire and smoke bursts upward, flinging men and debris into the river below. The blast should have torn the Ludendorff Bridge apart, should have ended it all, but when the smoke clears, it's still there, twisted, groaning, but standing. Drabick can hardly believe it. "Holy hell, she's still up," he yells, waving his men forward. They sprint the rest of the way, bullets snapping overhead, grenades clattering across the decking. On the far bank, German defenders fire from trenches and windows, their faces pale and desperate. But the momentum has shifted. The impossible has just become reality. By mid-afternoon, the stars and stripes ripple on the eastern bank of the Rhine. The first American soldiers have crossed into Germany, and the bridge that should have fallen has defied destruction. Timmermann climbs onto the span, his boots ringing against the trembling steel. The river rushes below, carrying smoke, splinters, and bodies downstream. Around him, engineers begin securing the bridge, diffusing charges, patching holes, shouting over the chaos. He looks toward the far horizon, where the black columns of German armor are already moving to counterattack. This victory, he knows, will not come cheap. The afternoon light over Remagen fades into a dull amber haze as the 9th Armored Division digs in on the far bank of the Rhine. Smoke still hangs low over the river, and the metallic groan of the Ludendorff Bridge never stops, its trusses vibrating under the ceaseless rumble of tanks, trucks, and men. Captain Timmermann stands at the bridgehead, his uniform streaked with grime and sweat. Around him, engineers in olive-drab helmets scurry like ants across the deck, cutting wires, tossing smoking detonators into the river, shouting orders through the din. The bridge shakes under each crossing vehicle, but the men can't stop now. "Keep it moving," a sergeant bellows, waving forward another column of Shermans. "Don't bunch up. Spread it out. Keep your intervals." Every second counts. Higher command knows it. General Courtney Hodges, commander of the U.S. First Army, receives the unbelievable report. A bridge still stands at Remagen. His staff stare in stunned silence before he snaps, "Then by God, hold it. Use it." Word spreads like wildfire through Allied lines. Eisenhower himself, in his headquarters at Versailles, pauses when he hears the message. "The bridge is still standing?" he repeats, incredulous. Then a slow grin spreads across his face. "Well, that's the best news I've heard in weeks." Across the Rhine, though, chaos reigns. Major Hans Scheller, the German officer responsible for defending Remagen, paces furiously near the eastern abutment, his hands trembling as he shouts into a field telephone. "We tried, Herr General. The charges misfired. The bridge didn't collapse." His superior, furious, cuts him off. "Then destroy it with artillery, airstrikes, whatever it takes. That bridge must not remain in American hands." Within hours, German artillery begins hammering the area. Shells scream down from the hills beyond Erpel, exploding around the bridge towers, showering stone fragments across the deck. American GIs dive for cover, clutching their helmets as debris rains down. But still, the line of men keeps moving across the trembling span into the heart of Germany. Private First Class William McNamara, 19 years old from Kansas City, grips his M1 rifle tight as he runs across the bridge. His boots pound against the metal decking, each vibration making his stomach twist. He can feel the entire structure swaying beneath him, a massive, living thing groaning under impossible strain. "Don't look down," mutters the soldier beside him. "Just keep moving." On the far side, tanks are already spreading out, forming a thin, improvised bridgehead. The Germans are stunned, caught entirely off guard. They had expected to make their last stand behind the Rhine, believing the Americans would need weeks to bring up pontoon bridges or engineers. Instead, the Allies are across in a single afternoon. By nightfall, the bridge glows red in the firelight. Engineers work by headlamp, reinforcing the deck, welding steel plates over shell holes. The air smells of smoke, oil, and scorched paint. Every few minutes, another artillery round whistles in, sending a geyser of water into the river. A few miles away, in a farmhouse-turned command post, General William Hogue, commander of Combat Command B, studies a map spread across a wooden table. His face is lined with fatigue, but his eyes are fierce. "We're sitting on the only intact bridge over the Rhine," he says to his staff. "The Germans will throw everything they have at it. We hold until we're relieved. No exceptions." His officers nod grimly. Outside, the thump of anti-aircraft guns echoes through the night, because the Luftwaffe is coming. At dawn on March 8th, the first German aircraft appear, dozens of Focke-Wulf 190s and Messerschmitt 262 jets screaming down from the clouds. The bridge below bursts into flame as bombs and rockets slam into the riverbanks. The shock wave throws men from their feet, rattling the fragile trusses. But again, the Ludendorff Bridge stands. Smoke drifts across the water as engineers scramble to douse fires, pulling the wounded from the wreckage. Somewhere amid the chaos, Sergeant Drabik is still fighting, his uniform torn, his face blackened. "They can hit it all day long," he shouts over the roar, "but that damn bridge ain't quitting." By noon, more than 8,000 Allied troops have crossed. Engineers race to build additional pontoon bridges nearby, knowing the Ludendorff can't last forever. But every hour it holds gives Eisenhower another division, another tank battalion, another chance to drive deep into Germany before the enemy can recover. And far to the east, Adolf Hitler is losing his mind. In his bunker near Berlin, he receives the news and flies into one of his infamous rages, screaming at his generals for allowing the Americans to cross. He orders the immediate execution of the officers responsible for Remagen's defense. Major Scheller and his men know what's coming, but they have no illusions left. The Führer wants vengeance, not explanations. Meanwhile, on the Rhine, the Americans dig in. Mortar teams set up along the eastern shore, machine gun nests carved into the soft, muddy riverbank. The bridge has become both lifeline and target, a vital artery feeding men and armor into the enemy's heart, and a constant reminder of how fragile that lifeline is. At dusk, Timmermann walks the span again. He watches the river below, the dark current swirling beneath the twisted metal. Every creak and shudder feels like a heartbeat, fragile but defiant. He thinks of how close it came, how one working detonator, one properly connected cable, could have changed everything. But fate or luck, or something beyond both, has chosen otherwise, and the bridge that should have collapsed still stands. March 9th, 1945, Remagen, Germany. Dawn breaks through a haze of smoke and river mist. The Ludendorff Bridge groans under the relentless weight of war. Tank treads grinding on steel, the hammer of artillery echoing from both sides of the Rhine. The once quiet town of Remagen now resembles a scar on the earth, its streets filled with shattered glass, smoldering ruins, and the bodies of men who fought to claim or defend the impossible. Captain Karl Timmermann hasn't slept in nearly 48 hours. His uniform is stiff with dried mud, his helmet dented from shrapnel. As he stands near the bridge's western approach, his eyes are fixed on the horizon where the Germans are regrouping. Through binoculars, he can see them, grey-clad infantry moving between hedgerows and rubble, flak guns being wheeled into position, artillery pieces dragged by exhausted horses. Somewhere among those formations, German engineers are preparing new weapons, unlike anything the Americans have yet faced. The order from high command is clear: hold the bridge at all costs. Timmermann turns to his radio operator. "Tell HQ we're still intact. Heavy shelling, but the span's holding." The operator nods, adjusting his headset as static fills the air. "Roger that, Captain." Then, almost casually, a low rumble rises from the clouds above. The men look up. What they see freezes them in place. A squadron of Arado R-234 jet bombers, sleek, silver, and impossibly fast, dives toward the river. The Luftwaffe has sent its newest jet bombers to finish what the engineers and artillery couldn't. The roar of their twin engines shakes the earth as they release their bombs in synchronized bursts. "Take cover!" someone screams. The sky splits open. Bombs crash around the bridge, geysers of water and steel erupting on both banks. Fragments whistle through the air, slicing into men and vehicles alike. One direct hit tears through a pontoon bridge downstream, flipping boats like toys. Timmermann throws himself behind a concrete barrier as a fireball engulfs a nearby truck. The concussion slams through his chest. When the dust clears, he sees the bridge, scarred, smoking, but miraculously still standing. Every man in sight seems to exhale at once. But the Germans aren't done. That night they launch a counterattack from the eastern shore, waves of infantry supported by tanks and machine guns. The Americans, entrenched and weary, fight them off in brutal close combat. Muzzle flashes strobe through the darkness. The air smells of cordite and burned oil. The Rhine reflects it all like a black mirror, fire and fury rolling on its surface. In the chaos, Sergeant Alex Drabick and his men hold the line at the far end of the bridge. German soldiers swarm through the ruins of Erpel, shouting orders in clipped bursts. Drabick's squad returns fire from behind the cover of sandbags and twisted metal. "Keep it tight," he yells. "Don't let them near the span." Tracer fire arcs across the river, red and white streaks painting the night. Every burst of machine gun fire reverberates off the steel girders. By dawn, the Germans fall back again. Hundreds of them lie dead or captured. The Americans, bloody, dazed, and running low on ammunition, still hold the bridge, but holding it comes at a cost. The Ludendorff's steel frame is no longer stable. Each explosion has warped it further. Each tank that crosses adds new strain. The engineers monitor the structure constantly, reporting that the main trusses have begun to buckle. The bridge trembles visibly with every crossing, and deep cracks have formed in the stone towers anchoring it to the banks. Still, they push men across, hour after hour. Over 25,000 troops now stand on the east bank, forming what's being called the Remagen Bridgehead, the first Allied foothold east of the Rhine. It's a stunning breakthrough, one that catches the attention of the entire world. American newspapers print the headlines in bold, "Yanks cross the Rhine." But to the men on the ground, there's no time for celebration. German V-2 rockets begin raining down on the bridge from launch sites deep within the Reich. Each missile screams through the sky, leaving a fiery trail before exploding miles or mere yards from the river. The pressure wave knocks men flat. The sound is like thunder tearing the heavens apart. Engineers work frantically through the barrages, welding supports, replacing beams, reinforcing decking with scavenged steel. "If it stands another day," one of them mutters, "it's a miracle." For Captain Timmermann, every minute feels borrowed. He sends constant situation reports back to command. Casualty lists, ammunition counts, structural damage assessments. His handwriting grows shakier with each message. By March 10th, he receives word that his actions will likely earn him the Distinguished Service Cross. But when he hears it, he only shakes his head. "Tell them to give it to the bridge," he says quietly. "She's doing all the work." As the sun sets that evening, the bridge glows orange in the firelight, its silhouette standing tall against the burning sky. Smoke drifts across the valley, and the wind hums through the shattered girders like a dirge. Every man who crosses knows it might not stand tomorrow. Yet still, they march. March 17th, 1945. 10 days after the crossing. The Ludendorff Bridge is dying. The once mighty span that carried thousands of men across the Rhine now trembles under its own weight. Each gust of wind makes the twisted steel groan like a wounded animal. Engineers pace the deck, their boots clanging against metal warped and blackened by fire. Beneath them, the river churns, a cold, grey torrent littered with debris from days of bombardment. Captain Karl Timmermann stands near the western tower, his helmet pulled low, coat collar up against the wind. His eyes follow the endless flow of soldiers, vehicles, and equipment still crossing in tight formation. Trucks loaded with ammunition, half-tracks, jeeps filled with medics and wounded men. The war moves eastward, deeper into Germany, carried on the back of a bridge that should have fallen days ago. Then, at 3 p.m., a sharp crack rings out, a sound like a rifle shot, magnified 1,000 times. Everyone freezes. "Get off the bridge!" an engineer yells. "She's giving way!" Timmermann turns just as the first section of the main span folds inward. Steel beams twist and scream. The central truss collapses in a deafening roar, tearing the decking apart as it plunges into the river below. The air fills with dust, smoke, and the cries of men thrown into the water. Within seconds, the Ludendorff Bridge, after enduring bombs, artillery, rockets, and jets, finally succumbs to physics. The western tower tilts, then crumbles, sending stone blocks crashing into the Rhine. The current swallows the debris, pulling down cables and sections of twisted iron. When the dust clears, all that remains are 2 shattered towers and the river rushing mercilessly between them. Silence falls over Remagen. For a long moment, no one speaks. The wind howls through the valley, carrying away the last echoes of the collapse. On the eastern bank, men stare across the water, stunned, not with fear, but with awe. The bridge had stood for 10 days longer than anyone believed possible, and in those 10 days it had changed the course of the war. In the days that follow, the engineers complete new pontoon and Bailey bridges upriver, allowing the Allied armies to continue their surge into the heart of Germany. Patton's Third Army begins crossing further south. Montgomery prepares his assault in the north. But none of it would have been possible without the foothold gained at Remagen. Military historians will later call it one of the greatest engineering and tactical miracles of the war, a triumph of grit, improvisation, and sheer luck. But for those who were there, it's remembered differently. Sergeant Alex Drabick, the first American to dash across the Ludendorff Bridge, sits on a pile of rubble days later, his uniform stiff with mud. He stares at the spot where the span once stood, the sound of the river still roaring in his ears. "She did her job," he mutters quietly. "Held longer than anyone thought she could." Nearby, engineers recover the bodies of men lost during the collapse. 31 Americans who paid the price for those final crossings. Their sacrifice becomes part of the bridge's story, inseparable from its legend. And far away, in a dark bunker beneath Berlin, Adolf Hitler rages once more. The failure at Remagen, he declares, is proof of treason and cowardice. He orders the execution of 5 officers, including Major Hans Scheller, the man who tried and failed to destroy the bridge. They are shot within weeks, their deaths buried under the collapsing Third Reich. Meanwhile, the Allied push accelerates. Within a month, American tanks roll through the Ruhr Valley, encircling hundreds of thousands of German troops. The Rhine, the last great natural barrier, has been breached. The war in Europe is entering its final chapter. Years later, long after the guns have fallen silent, the ruins of the Ludendorff Bridge remain. The twin stone towers still rise from the banks at Remagen, scarred but standing. Vines grow through the cracks in the masonry, birds nest in the hollow windows. Visitors come to see them. Veterans, families, schoolchildren. They stand in the quiet, listening to the river, imagining the chaos that once consumed this place. A museum now rests inside one of the towers, the Peace Museum at Remagen. Inside are photographs, fragments of steel, personal letters, and the stories of both sides. The message carved in stone near the entrance reads, "The bridge that once brought war now stands for peace." Captain Karl Timmermann would later return home, his heroism recognized, but his name seldom spoken in the headlines. He died young, just a few years after the war, but his legacy, and that of his men, lives on in every history book that tells of the Rhine crossing. The Ludendorff Bridge was not supposed to stand. Every calculation, every plan, every demolition charge said it would fall. And yet it didn't. It defied destruction, it defied logic, it defied the war itself. For 10 days in March 1945, that bridge held the weight of nations. and in doing so, it carried the Allies across the final river between war and victory.